Welcome back to another episode of the Story Lab. Thank you guys for being here. I'm excited today because we have a different angle for the Story Lab podcast. We're not going to be talking about the stories today, but we're going to be talking about something that's going to allow you to stay out of some stories and to actually focus on the ones that you want to focus on. So I'm really excited today because we have Ralph Estep Jr. Welcome, Ralph. And let's jump into what we're going to talk about, which is money, not stories today. It's going to be more money. So you pitched this episode to me and you talked about how it's so important to manage the chaos of running your business in order to maintain a lot of your sanity and two, your creativity and your ability to create your content. So why don't we jump in with how can you help people with money and keep it out of their stories and that angle there?
I think it all starts, and thank you, by the way, for having me on the show. I think it all starts with building a system because I think, what I phrase it is this, Jonathan. Most creators live in what I call content creator money chaos. And listen, I'm a creator too. I've been doing accounting work for 30 years, but I'm also a creator, so I get it. You've got income coming in from multiple different directions and different platforms and Stripe and AdSense. You get the idea. And the people listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, one of the ways that you can keep yourself out of hot water with the IRS and keep yourself out of hot water with making sure you're making money is to have a setup, have a structure. And that's really what I want to talk about today because once you have a system built, I think as James Clear says, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you've got a strong system, it prevents so many problems because otherwise you're going to be constantly living in this chaos. And the problem with that chaos leads to taking away from your ability to create because you're stressed out about how am I going to pay my bills next month? I'm stressed out about here comes April 15th. I'm going to get ambushed on taxes. You're stressed out about is this actually paying my bills? Can I make better decisions? So that's what I want to help build today is a system so that you can have what I call a 10-minute a weekly check-in and you'll know how things are going. Your I's will be dotted, your T's will be crossed, and you keep yourself out of that chaos as best as we can.
Yeah, because I know as a creator, not only are we creating all the stuff, but we also have all the tools to create the stuff. And I know that is one of my biggest stresses because I have 9,000 tools that are each, $80 a month or whatever they are. I'm sit there and I'm going, do I need all these things? Am I paying for all these things? Where, so I know that's one of my biggest concerns and something that I see with a lot of other people. And then okay, I'll be honest. I'm terrible at invoicing. If it's not an automatic invoice, I never invoice it. So, there's probably money out there that I'm owed. So tell me more about this easy system that's 10 minutes a week.
So first thing, let's start off first place. First thing you've absolutely got to do is you've got to separate your business and your personal money. That's number one. When I meet with content creators, I do this every day. First thing I tell them, separate. Now, you might not have a business. You might not have an S corporation or an LLC. That's a discussion for another day. It may make sense to do that. But the absolute first thing you've got to do is carve this out into two separate places. Fancy accounting term is commingling. The IRS detests that. So number one thing, set up a business bank account. Now, you might be saying, Ralph, I don't have a business. That's okay. Set up a separate personal checking account, a separate personal credit card. And Jonathan, to start off with, make sure all of your expenses for the business are going against those accounts. At the same time, make sure your income streams are getting deposited to that account. Because then at a very base level, you've got what's called separation, because that's where the problem really starts. Once you've got that separation, then I'm going to recommend some accounting software, maybe something like QuickBooks Online or Wave. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and you don't have to spend a ton of money doing that. The other reason I really like that, Jonathan, is you could do what's called a bank feed. Let me walk you through that. You connect these software pieces to your bank, and then what happens is as you spend money or as you receive money, it feeds into your software. And then once a week and go say, okay, this is this, categorize it. That weekly check-in I was talking about, you can make sure you did all your billing for this week. You can go check all the platforms because here's the thing a lot of people don't realize. Stripe and PayPal are not banks. They're platforms. When the money's there, get it off of there. Move it to your business bank account so that you can start accounting for that stuff and you can start living on what you actually have. Funny story. Content creators say to me, Ralph, I had a really good month last month. I built $2,000 worth of brand deals. I'm like, that's fantastic. They said, but here's the problem, Ralph. I've only got $1,800 in my account. Well, they didn't account for the service fee that PayPal's charging them. That's another reason that I like to push it down to the business bank account so that you know what you have to work with. But Jonathan, that's the first part, is separate the things. Second part is track. Keep track of everything. I hope that answers your question, but that's where I start to build that system, because if you don't have a system, then what's going to happen, and I see this all the time, is you're going to come see somebody like me in March or April, and I'm going to say, Jonathan, I see you got a 1099 from Stripe here for $90,000 last year. That's taxable income to you, dude. And you're like, but Ralph, I don't have any money to show for that, because you don't have a system. You've got to have a setup where you're taking pictures of receipts, you're keeping track of all that stuff.
And I most of my billing is done online, which is great for that because I automatically have the paperwork. But yeah, paying attention to it is a different story, which is why the first thing I did was hire an accountant. I'm being honest, hire an accountant.
And Jonathan, that is the key. And it's funny, in the content creator realm, people don't like to spend money. But you're going to spend money in the long term, because if you do it wrong, the IRS is going to come after you, state and local authorities are going to come after you, and it's going to cost you more. So go find the help you need and get it set up from the start. And one of the other things, Jonathan, you were talking about, you don't like to invoice, then set aside a certain time each week, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that is, every Friday, every Sunday, whatever works for you, and say, here's my checklist of things I've got to do. I want to check what came in, because it doesn't have to be rocket science. It could be something simple as what came in, what went out, what's left over, what do I have to pay this week, and what do I need? I believe also, as you're setting those accounts up, set up a separate account, what I call your tax savings account, and actually carve that piece out as you go. I also believe in pay yourself first. We could talk about that later if you want, but actually carve out a percentage for yourself as well. But have that weekly check-in, because then it's not this big burden on you at the end of the month or the end of the quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about pay yourself first, because I know from my clients, that is not something that happens. So talk about pay yourself first and how they can do that. And still, because I know their concern is going to be, how do I have money to pay for everything else that's going on?
It's really a mind shift change. This is the way I would implement that. So when you go set up that bank account, actually set up 3 bank accounts. Set up what I'll call your operational account, set up your tax account, and set up your profit account. And then every Friday, I'm using Friday as an example, but let's say this week you brought in $1,000 in money that hit your account. I mean, this is real money. This isn't pie in the sky, think I'm going to get money. This is money in your account. Next thing you do is you say, okay, I'm going to put 15% into the tax account, because I know at the end of the year, my taxes are going to be around 15%. Again, it depends on your situation. So of that 1,000, I'm going to put 150. I know doing math on a podcast is not smart, but we're going to do it. So you're going to put $150 into that tax savings account. Okay. The next thing you say is, well, I need so much money to live on. That's what I call the profit first. So let's just say you're going to put 20% of whatever you make into the profit first. So now you grab $200 in that $1,000 example, and then you put $200 over there. Well, now what's the math add up to? Now we've spent $350. So what you've got left over, and this is the mindset shift. And listen, they don't even teach us in accounting school. This is how important this is. You got $650 left over. That's what you actually can spend in the business that is actually your money. You've already accounted for the taxes, and you've accounted for your mortgage and your rent and all the things you've got to pay personally. So now you can actually live in a realism of where you really are. This is what I have to do. And see, when you change the mindset, because see, here's the problem. A lot of content creators, a lot of business people in general, they tell me this. They say, Ralph, I got money in the bank. I must be doing well. Well, your bank is not your bookkeeper. You might have money in the bank, but how much of that's the IRS's? How much of that is money that you need to pay your bills? And then, so by doing this, you set out with your end in mind right from the beginning. And then that money isn't gone. And if you go to do your taxes and you put in there, it's still your money. And you have that money in that that profit account that you can pay your personal bills. Because what happens is, Jonathan, you have a rough week, right? And then what happens is, oh, I've got this bill I wasn't expecting. Well, I'll just pay it from the business. And then the next week happens, oh, I'm going to do the same thing and pay it from the business. And then all of a sudden you go to look at your business account because your subscription came up. I call subscriptions the death by 1,000 cuts, by the way. That's a whole nother discussion. But because a lot of times content creators have these scripts, they don't know what they're paying for. But that's a different discussion. We should talk about auditing those. But this way you're living by what you actually have. And once you change your mindset and you start to do that, you start to notice, wow, this works.
Yeah. And auditing, every 6 months, I tell my clients all the time, because they sign up for things and they're like, I'm going to use this. I have this AI feature, and every 6 months, just go through them and cancel everything.
And the problem with that is, Jonathan, I'm going to throw some of these subscription companies on the bus. They always push you into, well, buy a year. Oh, because you're going to get a deal on that. Well, that sounds great, except for then it renews automatically after a year. Put that stuff on your calendar for 60 days before the renewal date. Just put it right on your calendar, because it's happened to me. There's one thing, I think it's called Jib Jab. I didn't even realize I subscribed to this thing like 10 years ago, and every year it hits my credit cards. Oh, I got to go take that off. So finally, I put it on my calendar, and this year I said, I'm done with this Jib Jab. I'm done with it. I put it in there, took them out. They're like, oh, we'd like to keep you. We'll charge you 20%. I'm like, no, you've been taking it for 3 years. I've never used it.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I know that feeling. Talk about how this is going to help me as a content creator be better at content creation.
It's going to take away the stress, because now you're not stressed about tax time. You're not stressed about how am I going to pay my bills. You're not stressed about what do I have money to spend on? Can I take that trip? Can I pay for that VA? Can I hire that consultant? Can I pay for that coach? You're going to have what I call clarity. And when clarity comes freedom. And with freedom comes the ability to be creative. Because if you're constantly living in this chaos, it's always over your head. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen next. It enters all parts of your life. But when you have that clarity, then you can really be free and really be creative, because you're not stressed. Because your energy, you only got so much energy, right, Jonathan? Mm-hmm. So much of your energy. Just think about it like a battery, right? You can only you got 100% of that battery. Well, if 40% of your battery is stressing out about money, maybe you've got a spouse or a partner. They're like, we need money. Well, if you haven't carved it out ahead of time, you're constantly stressed about that. But when you're stressed about it, you can't put 100% into your creativity. And that's where the real value is in this. The compliance is great. I want to keep you out of jail. You don't want to go down like Al Capone. That's a big part, but let's not oversell that. But the big part of it is mental clarity. That mental clarity to be able to do your content creation and be like, this is where I make money. This is where I'm going to be effective. We just have to have the system in place to let you get to that.
Yeah. Systems and repetition in everything. It's amazing how that works. You get clarity.
I would even add
content.
A word rhythm. Yeah. And I would say a rhythm. And that's why I'm building into that Friday rhythm. And like I said, don't pick Friday, pick whatever day you want, but it's that rhythm. Once you get into a rhythm, it's kind of like dancing. Like I can do this every week. I do my money move. Everything's set and ready to go.
Yep. That's how I teach content too. So you got to do it. I always say Sundays is your content day. So yeah, absolutely. What are the results? I don't want to promise anything. I hate promising things to people. But how much time is this going to take somebody to do maybe once a week? And how is it going to change their life? What's going to be the main change that they're getting?
Once you have the system set up, for most content creators, it takes about 10 minutes a week. That's the truth, right? The benefit of that is you'll see how much you're actually making. When I talk to content creators, first thing I ask them, I said, how much money did you make on your content creation last month? They look at me like, oh, I got that number, Ralph. I made $6,000. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. You made 6,000 or you billed 6,000? Oh, no, you didn't ask me that question. You said, I'll give you a great example, Jonathan. I worked with a guy last year. He said, Ralph, I had a great year. I made $80,000 on the platforms. I'm like, that's fantastic. As a content creator, I'm like, that's fantastic. And he said, but the only problem is I don't have any of it left. So he had no idea where his money had gone. Well, when we ran the numbers, you know what his profit was? $80. Because he had spent money on this and it, because that's the problem. It's like feast or famine in the content world. Like you have a great month, you land a brand deal, then you're like, oh, I need a new Rodecaster. I need a new camera. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go buy a new laptop. Yeah, that stuff is great. But is that the right financial decision? So here's the takeaway. You get 10 minutes of your life. You give that away to have complete clarity of what's going on in your business so that you can make better decisions. So like, let's say we just got past PodFest, right? You decide, you know what? I really would like to go to PodFest next year. If you don't know what your business is doing, how do you justify that expense? But if you know that your business is generating revenue, they can say, okay, fine. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up a PodFest account. And each month I'm going to put $200 into the PodFest account. So that way, by the time we get to the end of the year, I got $2,000 or $2,500. I'm ready to go. So that, Jonathan, to me, is what the real value of this is. Mental clarity and the ability to really look at where you are from a practical standpoint and see what's going on in your business. Because it's a business. Look, if you're a content creator, you are in business. Now, you might say, Ralph, well, this is just a hobby. That's fine with me. you're still in business. And even if you have a hobby, if you ever make a dime, you're going to want to keep track of all those expenses, because when you go to file your tax return, assuming that you're not going to play an Al Capone and go to jail, you're going to have to claim that income. And you're going to want to have whatever expenses you were. And we can talk about that. There's a ton of expenses that content creators don't even think about. But that's what you get from that. You get clarity, both mental clarity and financial clarity.
Yeah, I love that. And let's actually talk about some things, because this is going to air before April, so they have some of this information. What can they call expenses? I've got things like my clothing rental. Is that an expense?
So here's my quick and dirty answer to that. If you ask me for a list of expenses, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, the one doesn't exist. Here's what the IRS says. If it's business, routine, and necessary, use your clothing as an example. If you buy clothes for your show, here's the hurdle, okay? If you could wear those clothes outside of your show, the IRS is probably not going to let you write that off. But Jonathan, you got a very shiny, glittery hat there, right? Which is your trademark. That's your brand. I could write that off. It all comes down to what's the story. It's not that you have a receipt. It's not that you paid for it. It's what's the story behind it. And see, content creators, they'll take a picture of a receipt and say, oh yeah, here's a great example. Let's say you go to Best Buy, right? You put something on your credit card. Well, if you get audited, you might say, well, that's no problem. I'm going to give them a copy of my credit card statement. And the IRS agent's going to look at that and laugh at you and say, okay, well, what did you buy at Best Buy? And you're going to say, that was last March. I couldn't tell you. That's why you got to have the receipt. Because then when they get into the receipt, they can say, oh, okay, I bought a new laptop. Well, I do all my work on my laptop. That's deductible. But maybe you also bought a PS4, whatever they're up to now. That's not deductible unless maybe you do a gaming podcast. Then maybe that is deductible. So it all comes down to the purpose. What is the purpose of the expense? Most content creators don't have a separate office. They work from their home. I'm getting ready to record a show for my show, or record a series for my show about home office deductions. So you got to understand there's components to that. Maybe a portion of your internet. Hey, we got one of these cell phones right over here next to me, right? These cell phones, it's got a camera. You get your email from it. Chances are you can write off 100% of your cell phone bill. So all of those things, anything, so big picture, anything that you can justify that there's a business purpose for this deduction. Does that help you? I wish I could say to you, hey, do this, this, and this. Travel expenses, any kind of subscriptions. I mean, there's a whole host of, obviously the easy things are cameras and equipment, shotgun mics, all those type of things. That's simple. If you pay a consultant, if you pay for coaching services, anything like that is pretty straightforward. But where I can help content creators is find the ones that most people don't think about.
Yep. I forgot about my coaching this year. I got to send that over to my accountant.
See, there you go. That's one you don't want to. And Jonathan,
yeah.
I'm gonna throw you under the bus. So had you been doing that weekly 10-minute check-in when you made that payment, you would have said, "Oh, I got to categorize that. Let me put that." I'm not trying to pull you down, dude, but that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because then you see those things as you go, and you're like, "Oh, mental note." Because you may need to give that person a 1099 also. Because I don't know if they're incorporated or if they have their own business, but if you're looking at that on a weekly basis, then you prevent those problems down the road.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think about things like my clothing rental, because I do rent my clothes just for the recordings, which makes them deductible. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or if you have brand stuff, if you have a logo on it or something, again, you have to remember I always tell people this, if you can convince your grandmother that it's business use, it's probably safe, because most people aren't going to lie to grandma. Let's be honest, right? Unless your grandmother and you have a really bad relationship. But for the most part, you can be like, because think about it, it's only a problem if it's a problem. If you hit the audit lottery, you're going to have an IRS agent sitting in front of you, and they're going to say, okay, Jonathan, explain this to me. You can say, well, I rent my clothing. I have a cool hat. And they're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. That's your brand.
Okay.
If you told me, hey, I buy Louis Vuitton clothing because I want to look sharp, and I'm like, I don't know about that. That might get you in trouble.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So one big takeaway for everybody, just to wrap it up today, what would you say is one big takeaway for everybody?
Separate your money.
I know what you're going to say. Separate
your money. Separate and track. Those are my two. I'm going to give you two big tracks.
Okay.
Separate business and personal and track it all. If you do those two things, you're 95% ahead of the people who aren't doing those things.
I feel bad for those people that aren't doing those things. I do.
No, I hear you, and they need to do them.
Yeah. Ralph, where can people find you if they are sitting here going, all of this is too much for me? How can I get some help?
Absolutely. So here's what you do. Go to contentcreatorsaccountant.com. And if you want to, go to contentcreatorsaccountant.com/help me. That'll take you to a link where you can get on my calendar. I give you a 15-minute discovery call. Tell me about what's going on. Absolutely free. I'll tell you about the systems that I can help you build and put you in place. So again, that's contentcreatorsaccountant.com/help me.
Okay. And if they decide that they need help from you, is there a program or anything that they can get into?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't have a standard program. I don't have like a 97 program, Jonathan. Everything is very dependent upon the individual person. So I build a program, but I can help them. I can take that overwhelm that they're feeling. I help them set a system up, and then the system kind of does its own thing. And I'm there for consulting. I do tax preparation in all 50 states. So no matter where you are, I can work with you. Your Zoom is great because we can have monthly meetings. We can do whatever you need to do, but I like to tailor those things to the individual person and make sure that it's meeting their needs. I can also help you set up entities, like if you want to do an S Corp or an LLC, but I can help you get organized so that you can focus on what you're good at, and that's content creation.
So I won't be crying in a corner somewhere. That's always the goal. I don't want to be crying in a corner.
Nobody wants you crying in the corner, Jonathan.
Not only me. Believe me, I've seen some fun things. So, no, but thank you very much, Ralph. I appreciate this. This is going to help so many of my people in my audience just figuring out those things, because a lot of them are coming out of corporate where they just had one thing that they just, here's my, whatever the heck we got. I don't remember.
The W-2. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You're going from being on the paycheck, and now and not to keep you, but I tell people all the time, you didn't realize when you were going to self-employed, you were going to be a payroll clerk, you're going to be a marketing clerk, you're going to be an accounting clerk, and you're going to do all these other jobs. But yeah, because it's complicated.
Yeah. Yep. It gets overwhelming. So I understand. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate that. Anything I forgot, didn't cover, something you want to say to people before we wrap up today?
Yeah, don't worry about this. I can help you with this. Don't feel overwhelmed. I can help you break free of that content creator money chaos. Just reach out to me at contentcreatorsaccountant.com.
Excellent. Thank you so very much, Ralph. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Story Lab. Didn't talk much story today, but it's going to keep you out of that really important story that you don't want to get into, like being audited by the IRS and not having your paperwork done. So thank you very much for being here, and I will see you again next time on another episode of the Story Lab. Take care.